The chances are, if you're a light worker, with all the energy shifts we're feeling at the moment, the chances are you feel spiritual awakening exhaustion. And I thought I would wear both my hats today, my Melissa B Priestess hat and my aromatherapist hat, to talk about the energies at play and the oils that I use to help me navigate this difficult time. So the first oil that I use is patchouli. And the reason for that is when you are doing inner work and consciously working to try and work towards higher consciousness, your body gets exhausted. And Carl Jung wrote quite a lot about this. He talked about it from a psychological perspective. He talked about how when he used to deal with clients and he was questioning their belief systems, when they changed their thinking around a belief system, a lot of the structures that were built around those belief systems crumbled. And so to get from A to B, they needed a whole set of new thought processes to be able to support their next step. And so if you have ever done any CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, you'll know that between thought A and thought B, there's an invisible universe of beliefs that need to be replaced. And he talked about how it required a transcendental bridge. That this bridge to map the old set of beliefs with the new set of beliefs took a lot of work. And he talked a lot about this exhaustion that comes from this. And patchouli is so good at acting a bit like cement in the bricks. So patchouli gets a really bad press, and I'm sure a lot of you go, oh, but I don't like patchouli. No, you might not like the smell of patchouli. I guarantee you're going to like the way that it makes you feel. So if you don't like the smell of it, I would say put it on your feet. What I'm going to do is put some slides up with all the safety and how to use it. So I won't get into too much about that. But rather than saying, no, I'm not going to use that, think about how am I going to use it that it's not going to offend my sense of smell. So imagine that we've thought about how there is a gap between thought A and thought B and the universe that exists in between, and how we have to build that bridge. But also, if we think about it from an actual physiological point of view, we can say, well, it's like the messages that go along a nerve to a nerve, and in between there's a gap, which we call like a synapse. And there's something about patchouli that first of all brings the energy down from the head into the body. So rather than you feeling like you're really spacey and exhausted, it brings everything down into the body to be able to rest and restore, to help the parasympathetic nervous system do what it needs. But somehow it seems to be able to get between the cells. And I always think about, you know, when you have a cushion on the settee and it's been smashed to pieces, really. It's like lost all its stuffing out of it. It's all bent and it doesn't quite get how you want it to go. And then you go and buy yourself another cushion filler and it just looks fab. It just looks plumped up, and that is exactly what patchouli is like. It gets into every cell of the body and just goes, right, I'm going to cushion you. So what happens is everything in the body slows down. So your thoughts become quieter, you become calmer, your body becomes calmer, you sleep much better, and hopefully you also feel like you want to have some good sex as well, because it has that aphrodisiac property. So I would say to you, the first thing that you want to do, rather than trying to get energy, is calm down and get rested. So I'm going to put this slide up so you can see patchouli. So I mentioned that I am a Melissa B Priestess. I'll put a video link at the top so you can have a look at my experiences about that rather than getting into it here. But in ancient Greece, the Melisai oversaw the biggest of all of the mysteries of the ancient world, the mysteries of Eleusis, the Eleusinian mysteries. And they worked with a very particular plant, and that was Myrtle. And that is because Myrtle is a gatekeeper and a sentinel plant. So for somebody who is doing energetic work, and perhaps you're shifting between realities, maybe you're doing shape-shifting work, or maybe you're just looking to work on ascension. When you move from one reality to another, you necessarily go through different energies, and different entities exist within that realm. And Myrtle is really good at saying, stay, this is mine, and protecting the aura to strengthen it, and also to strengthen the psyche, so that you can do battle with whatever you've got to do. Because when we're doing shadow work, that is hard to do. Now, there's sort of two big energies that I think are happening right now. So I'm videoing this on the 2nd of October 2025, and we are currently in retrograde. Eris is retrograding. So Eris brings up all sorts of narratives about oppression and separation, which I'll come back to in a minute. Also, if you're doing any kind of inner work, any kind of sacred work, particularly if you're doing sort of work for the goddess, you will fall into the resonance of Vesta. And Vesta is an asteroid. Eris is a dwarf planet. Vesta is an asteroid, and she is named after the Vestal Virgins and the sacred fire. So Vesta moves quite quickly. Eris moves very, very slowly, and we'll talk about her separately, but Vesta moves very quickly. And middle of September, she moved out of Scorpio into Sagittarius. So Vesta is, as I say, all about sacred work. When she was in Scorpio, anybody that is doing sacred work is in her resonance and followed her lead down into Scorpio. And Scorpio is the underworld. It is the shadow. It's the deepest part of our psyche. So what she's done is she's led you as a light worker to investigate your shadow big time. And all of us have been investigating that shadow. She's also about separation, and the Eleusinian mysteries were about two goddesses, really. They were about their holy story was about the goddess Demeter and the goddess Persephone, who was her daughter. And at the Eleusinian mysteries, Persephone would go back down into the underworld, where Vesta has taken us down into the underworld, and she would look after the dead. But the bigger story was the separation that happened between the mother and daughter. So Vesta is always asking us to investigate separation when she's in Scorpio. So it's dark, right? So we've all been going through this really dark energy. 13th of September, she moved, and she moved into Sagittarius, which is like the opposite. It's bright, it's expansive, it's higher learning, it's education, it's about, as I say, expansion. So if you were to put it into a bee analogy, bee pretest comes into movement, I would say. So the bees spend the first 3 weeks of their lives in darkness, and they work in darkness in the underworld in Scorpio, and then they have their chance to go foraging, and outside there's this beautiful light world which is just like enormous, right? So that is Sagittarius. So what's happened is we've gone from this very, very dark place into this huge expansive place, and potentially you want to tell people about the changes that you have undergone in your psyche and the things that you've come to know about yourself. But it's like so discombobulating to go from this dark into this brightness. And so this is another reason why Patchouli is so good, because everything about I always say if Sagittarius went fishing, his fish would be that big, you know. It's like so huge, so expansive. So you really have to watch your energy when Vesta goes into Sagittarius, because you just want to do too much, right? So Patchouli is very good at bringing that down. And in the Eleusinian mysteries, they would parade with Myrtle down to the actual ritual, and then when they had finished their ritual, they would wear a myrtle crown. In other words, they knew how to protect themselves as they went down into Scorpio and came back. So myrtle is just a brilliant oil if you feel like, I feel so exposed. I talked about Eris being retrograde, and Eris is lots of different things, and I'm going to do some more videos about her, but I think that the important thing to know is that she is about oppression. And the thing that I have been feeling most of all is, as a light worker and as somebody who learns from the plants and learns from the insects and is starting to be able to feel the consciousness of rocks, then I'm very aware that we are one, you know, we are all one. And that you turn on the telly and the amount of the divisiveness and the hatred and the oppression and the bullying and the wars and all of that stuff immediately comes smack up against my psyche. So what's happening is, when you do this kind of work and you start to really, your psyche becomes lighter, and you of course becomes light. That is, you are a light worker. But these things don't just, like, one day they're here, one day they're gone. It's just this continual process all of the time. And what's happening with Eris retrograde is she's bringing up these patterns from the past of, yeah, but how was I involved in that oppression? And so that's exhausting, because continually you're questioning yourself about your belief systems, right? Because on one hand you do believe all of this stuff that's ascending, but then there's like DNA in your body and ancestral memory that goes, but that's not what you always believed. And so we have this like push you pull me all of the time with it. And again, Myrtle is really good for that. I'll give us a slide. Next, how do we lift ourselves out of it, right? Because it's so draining, it's so heavy. Well, my favourite oil to use would be grapefruit. I like yellow grapefruit. Everybody raves over pink grapefruit, and pink grapefruit would do the job, but I like, or white grapefruit it's called, even though it's definitely yellow, right? There's something about the chemistry of grapefruit that breaks things down. So in the physical body, it breaks down fat. Yeah, you heard me right. Yeah, it does. It moves the fluid of the lymphatic system, and also it thins the blood, right? So it makes everything about us thinner and lighter. So it's the opposite of what Patchouli's doing. Patchouli wants to make us more dense because it wants to ground us. So we don't want to become stodgy and heavy and too grounded, because we still want the light to come through. And that's what grapefruit does. It allows the light to come through. I always say I don't know if you have it in other countries, we have a vitamin here called Barocca. Sorry, product placement, and there's a tremendous advert that says it's you but on a really good day. I mean, it's the best strapline ever, but that is grapefruit. Grapefruit is you but on a really good day. And so even as your body is processing this deep stuff and getting calm and soothing and just really grounding down, and Myrtle is fortifying your energetic body, because let me guess how many of you didn't do the work to close down your aura and to do your chakras, to keep working on those energy centers all of the time. But we do have to reinforce the energetic structure all of the time. Myrtle says, let me do that for you. While you're doing everything else, let me just protect you. And then Grapefruit says, and let's just shine. It's beautiful. So I'll give you another slide. So hopefully you like that, and that you noticed that I had done a blend for you. If you didn't, flick back on and do a screenshot, because I did you a lovely blend. But I would suggest that you do a week working with patchouli. And when I say working with the spirit of the plant, but so you can be inhaling it. I like it in the bath. You can use it in your body oils. Just use it everywhere. Just get calm. Then give it a couple of days. So I would do a week on patchouli, then I would do 2 days with myrtle, and then I would switch over and do a week with grapefruit. Be careful of maximum dilution on grapefruit. Look back at the sign. Also make sure that you are using it right. If you've got blood thinners, we don't want you to use this oil. If you're on blood thinners, lemon would be nice. Not so great, but also very good. And yeah, so if you are finding these videos helpful, please do leave a comment below. It helps me to understand exactly the content that you want me to do. And if you haven't, please click like and click subscribe.